Webi you had a little bit of introduction to earlier. It's basically install stuff with one line from the official maintainer, and all it does is select the tarball from whatever their releases JSON is, downloads it, puts it in the path, adds the path to your shell variables, and it works for the various shells. So that's kind of the basics of it. There's no sudo required. It doesn't change permissions. It doesn't require a package manager. It doesn't have to update. It's like literally go fetch the JSON releases, download the latest file, or whatever file matches whatever you put after the at and so on. Okay, so that's what Webi is. And I introduced that first this morning. And the idea is that you should have all of your developer tools should be just one command away from installing. So GoReleaser is something that first of all, who is not using GoReleaser? This is not shame. This is just okay. So about half the room's not using GoReleaser. Okay. So does anybody? Well, okay. I hope to help you with that because GoReleaser is perhaps it's one of the most awesome tools that we have. It is build my code for a matrix of platforms and architectures, operating systems and architectures, and upload to GitHub releases or another releases API. So it supports multiple releases APIs, and you can do a matrix with it. So I'm just going to show you from the cheat sheet that I have. So another thing about Webi is that because I use it with clients, it started as a way for me to limit documentation of like, how do you get X installed? Follow these 10 easy instructions, update your path, and hope that your computer's in the right environment. But so everything has a cheat sheet on it. And so I have a cheat sheet for GoReleaser. And basically, once you've installed GoReleaser, you want to create a .goreleaser.yaml, which you do by doing GoReleaser init. And then the command that is kind of your dry run command is this right here, GoReleaser snapshot skip publish rmdist. And so what this is going to allow you to do is to test your build as it currently exists. And so go build of course should work for the project. We'll go through a little bit what it looks like. So you can have version information directly embedded in your code. You'll notice many of the tools that you get that are Go tools, they have Go version information that most likely came from GoReleaser. So you have version date and commit, some information that eventually will get printed out on the command line. You figure out how you want to print it on the command line. But I just wanted to show you embed that information. And then you have your program, it does whatever it does, and hopefully it has a version command that will print that out. So when GoReleaser runs, unless you tell it to do otherwise, it will replace those with the git tag and the date and the commit hash. And you will need to have a GitHub token. There's a link here to directly to go to your GitHub tokens. So let's see, there we go. So you create a token that has repo permissions. Just gonna do that. Now everybody can see my token. Now I'm going to delete it. I just wanted to show you how to print it. And then you can either export your GitHub token or you can put it in a file under. So a lot of people don't know this. If you're creating a command line tool, your configuration should go under .config. That is the standard. So if you're creating a tool called BOGO, your config should not be in home.bogo. Your config should be in .config/bogo. Just pro tip. The early Unix tools didn't do that, but now we know better. So anyway, so you put your GitHub token as just a plain string into your GitHub token file, and then you tag in your Git repository and you push. So the only things that you weren't already doing, hopefully, was that you've never run GoReleaser init before, and you may not have a file on your computer called GitHub token in the config directory for GoReleaser. And then what the config needs to look like, let me just get down here. So you can build for Raspberry Pi, you can build for lots of architecture. So this is kind of what it looks like. You generally want to set cgo enabled equals 0, which means that you're not going to include libc on Linux. You're not going to link to the system libraries on Mac OS. You're not going to link to MSVC on Windows, which means that your thing is just going to run. It can run in Docker, in a bare Docker image. It will run on anybody's computer, regardless of how old or how new it is, with basically just the constraints of the kernel, which change not that frequently. And then you define your matrix for your GoOS. So GoOS, your GoArch, which I think we can kind of safely take 386 out of the list now, but when I wrote this, it was still sometimes a thing. And then GoArm, which again, I think we can kind of take this out of the list now because I think everything's on ARM 8, which is ARM 64. Anyway, so you have a build matrix that looks like this. And if that's all you have for your build matrix, then it's going to work. And if you have like a command directory, you know, many projects, you might have more than one bin tool that you build, or you might just like the convention of putting your bin tool under command, then you can tell it how to run the Go build so that it will actually build your command. So here's an example of that. You can tell it what you want the binary to be named. You can also, in another example, I think I showed how to choose whether it's zip or tar. So I'm just going to scroll down here. So this is the more complete example. This is using cross compiling where there's a C tool chain, and like this has got all the fixins in it where you have to pass C flags. This is like the really, really complicated example. It is 2 pages long, but it's not that complicated. And it looks like I did not actually include in my cheat sheet how you do the tar versus zip, so I will update that. But anyway, or maybe I did later down. Let me see. I have a few different examples here under different headings. All the way at the top, there is a heading, basic usage, publishing to GitHub, publishing to Git and GitLab, Raspberry Pi, et cetera, et cetera. So you can kind of find the one that fits your use case, kind of take a peek at that. Oh, okay. In the one down at the bottom, I do have the archive section, and it shows, okay, for Windows, we want zip, but for Darwin and for Linux, we just want the default, which is going to be a tar. So point of all this is that if your code builds, and you build a binary, and you want to be able to distribute it, you created a developer tool, you want people to have access to it. If you use Go Releaser, then you can easily push it to GitHub releases, where the only steps people need to do are to download it from their releases, unpack it, put it into a folder that's in their path, and they're off to the races. And if you want to eliminate those steps, then you can basically copy and paste from any of the tools on Webi that were built with Go Releaser, and that's in the documentation. Do a find and replace with its name, with your tool's name, and then all people have to do is copy and paste one line. That'll work. So anyway, I think Go Release is great. I think you probably got some cool tools you've built for yourself you could make more accessible to other people, and I hope that you will use Go Releaser to do that.
Any questions for AJ? Yeah, Paul.
So how would you create a SHA or sign like a Windows or a Darwin build using Go Releaser?
Okay, so that is probably outside of the scope of Go Releaser. If you're looking at signed binaries, so on Mac, you don't actually need your binary to be signed. You just need to have in your install script to run to take off the quarantine bit. Windows, generally command line tools don't need to be signed. So I'm thinking command line tools. I'm not thinking UIs. So I don't know. You might get the sign out documentation. I've never used it.
So there's not like a call out type directive in Go Releaser to go out to some other tool or whatever.
Go Releaser has hooks. In fact, a lot of people that do Rust CLI tools use Go Releaser. But that is something that's outside of the realm of what I foresee. Is anybody convinced to release the tool of Go Release? It's okay if I only see one hand. I just need to see one.
I mean, I'll use it, but I don't release things. So. Next time I will.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, AJ. Let's give him a hand.